Hey there, welcome to another Dreadwinter devlog. It's been a while since the last update, and as I'm approaching the end of a fairly large piece of content, I wanted to show you guys what I've been working on. As the title suggests, I've added a farming and alchemy system where you can grow and produce unique coffee beans to use in the cafe. This wasn't something I was originally planning to add, and it entered the pipeline rather spontaneously. The idea actually came about when I had a dream one night, where in the game you could set up a farm and turn Dreadwinter into what I called a self-sustaining cafe. In the end, the game in the dream just evolved into a farming sim, which isn't quite what I wanted, but I like the idea of being able to create a supply of your own coffee beans. So I got to work turning this strange dream into a reality. As a little side note, you might notice that the exterior of the cafe and the area around it has changed a bit. I feel that as the game progresses and my art skills develop, that some parts of the game that were made early on are now lacking somewhat. So I've been making an effort to do some small but impactful changes to make it look better. Anyway, what I wanted to point out is that there's now an additional path available that leads to the farm. I was initially considering it to be next to the cafe, but I wanted to avoid having to change too much of the area. While I added some space for the player to grow crops outside, I thought it'd be cool if everything was done indoors, like a secret operation, which is a concept I always liked. With that in mind, the farm itself consists of a large barn in which the coffee processing happens, and a greenhouse to grow crops in. My goal is for farming to be a mid to late game feature to add a bit of variety to the gameplay without it turning into a farming sim. So I had to think of a reason to have the barn be inaccessible early on. The easiest way to do this was to have it be destroyed for some reason, and you would need to repair it, but I wasn't really sure what a good reason would be. I decided to tie in some of the world building I did before, and explored the idea of what would happen if a certain someone decided to grow a tree dragon, which I mentioned in a previous video, and ended up reaching adulthood and then tried to go on a rampage. I plan to add a few ways to repair the farm as well, in line with having multiple ways to play the game. There's the usual way of spending a lot of money, but also if you serve one of your regular customers enough and build up your relationship, they may just sponsor the development themselves. As I don't want the farming gameplay to draw away from the rest of the game, you can only grow coffee plants, and the beans are only used in the cafe, so you don't directly earn income from it. I wanted the process of producing coffee beans to be somewhat realistic, from planting and harvesting, to extracting the beans from the fruit, processing and roasting, though I don't really want the player to have to wait a few years for the coffee plants to produce fruit, so I did take some liberties. The main gameplay loop for this, outside of creating a supply of beans, is that coffee beans can develop or mutate random bonuses, which means that you would eventually be able to cultivate beans with special bonuses, similar to the ones you can buy from Godot & Co. You start with an ordinary coffee bean that has no bonuses, and plant it in a nursery, where it grows until it's ready to be moved to the main plots. Once it's moved to a plot, it then continues to grow until it matures, after which it will start to regularly produce fruit, which is harvested and processed to produce the beans used in coffee. Right now it takes about 5 in-game weeks from planting the nursery to producing fruit, but I'm not set on how long it will be in the end. You can also choose which soil and fertilizer to use at a certain cost, which can provide special bonuses for the crop as well. Every time a crop produces fruit, there's a chance for it to develop a single seed with a random bonus, which could be a change in taste, price increases or multipliers, or improvements to growth time and yield. You can then choose to keep this new variety and replant it, which allows you to produce coffee beans with that bonus. You can use up to 3 varieties of your personal beans at a time within the cafe, which should give you a good amount of freedom with what you can grow. Once the fruit is harvested from the crops, it's then moved to the barn, which contains all of the machines and the means to process them. There's a wet processing machine which extracts the beans from the fruit, drying surfaces for the beans, a hulling machine to remove the leftover husk, and a roasting machine, as well as a tasting area. I was considering having mini games for some of this, but again, as I didn't want the player to be spending too much time tending to the farm, I chose to automate most of the processes. I wanted to combine the modern machinery with a fantasy touch, but I couldn't really think of any ideas for fantasy machines to process coffee beans. I instead chose to create little machine workers called demons, which function similarly to things like minions or bangboos, who will carry out all of the manufacturing processes. I think having them around adds some life to the place as well, instead of everything being static. I do realise that waiting for your coffee plants to produce the bonuses you want might be quite a chore, so I came up with an alchemy system to speed things up. My vision for this is to use the combined power of science and magic to crossbreed coffee plants. Simply put, you can take two varieties of beans and combine them to produce a variety of coffee bean that has the bonuses of both. I'm sure that players will eventually produce beans with something like a 1000 times sale price multiplier, which does sound quite fun, so I don't plan to have a limit on how far the bonuses will go. There's still some polish to add and some playtesting to do, but I think this section of the game is nearly done, and I can start to move on to what I originally planned to work on. Lately I've been trying to take a more relaxed approach to game development, where I don't force myself to work crazy hours and rush things. Ultimately, no matter how hard I work, I think this game is going to take a while to finish, so I'm trying to find a good balance to avoid burning out in the process. I'm quite optimistic about how things are going right now, so I hope to keep the trend up. That's it for this video. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and wishlist Dreadwinter on Steam if you haven't, and thanks for watching.